Homeless woe man asks Elon Musk, "Can you give me $10?" Musk's response is shocking. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. The streets of Los Angeles held two different worlds. In one, success filled the air with possibility. In the other, struggle marked every corner. Lana Mitchell knew both worlds all too well. At 35, she walked these streets not as the successful professional she once was, but as someone who had lost everything. Just 6 months ago, Lana sat in a corner office at Carson & Associates, managing major client accounts. Her desk faced the city skyline and her days were filled with meetings and deadlines. She had been good at her job, really good, until the day it all ended. "We have to let you go," her boss had said. No warning, no severance pay, just an empty box and a walk to the elevator. Lana tried to stay strong, sending out job applications and going to interviews, but nothing worked out. As her savings disappeared, so did her hope. The fall happened slowly at first. She missed one rent payment, then another. Friends let her stay on their couches, but their patience didn't last forever. The stress became too much. Lana found comfort in drinking, just a little at first, then more. When alcohol wasn't enough, she tried other things, anything to forget her problems. Now she walked these same streets differently. Her brown hair, once perfectly styled, hung loose and tangled. Her gray-blue eyes, which used to shine with confidence, now looked tired and distant. Each day became about survival, finding food, finding shelter, finding ways to numb the pain. In the early mornings, Lana would sit near her old office building, watching people hurry to work. She saw her past life in their faces, their confidence, their purpose. Sometimes she barely recognized her own reflection in store windows. The successful woman she used to be seemed like a stranger now. In the busy streets of Los Angeles, Lana felt like a ghost. People walked past her without a glance, as if she were invisible. They stepped around her on the sidewalk, their eyes looking straight ahead, pretending not to see her worn clothes or tired face. Sometimes she wondered if she had become just another piece of the city landscape, like the trash bins or parking meters that everyone ignored. Each day brought the same struggles. Finding food meant searching through dumpsters behind restaurants or hoping for kindness from strangers. Finding a safe place to sleep became harder as winter approached. The nights grew colder, and Lana spent hours walking just to stay warm. Every morning she woke up wondering how she would make it through another day. Hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Her old life, the desk job, the apartment, regular meals, seemed like someone else's memories. She had lost her job, her home, her dignity, and worst of all, her connection to her family. Her daughter Emily's face haunted her dreams, making her wake up with tears in her eyes. Yet, in quiet moments, usually late at night when the city finally slept, Lana would look up at the stars, barely visible through the city lights. A small voice inside her whispered about change, about second chances. She tried to silence this voice, knowing how many times she had failed before, but it persisted, like a tiny flame refusing to die out. Could things be different? She would wonder, quickly pushing the thought away before it could grow into false hope. One chilly morning, Lana sat on the curb near SpaceX headquarters, hugging her knees for warmth. She watched employees hurry into the building, their badges swinging from lanyards around their necks. The scene reminded her of her own corporate days, though they felt like a lifetime ago now. Suddenly, a buzz of excitement rippled through the crowd. Security guards appeared. and a group of people emerged from the building's glass doors. In the center stood Elon Musk himself, talking animatedly with his team. Lana had seen him on the news countless times, but in person, he seemed more real, more approachable. For a moment, Lana sat frozen, watching him. She had nothing left to lose, no dignity to protect, no reputation to maintain. What was the worst that could happen? He might ignore her, like everyone else did. Or maybe, just maybe. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lana stood up on shaky legs. Her heart pounded as she took a step forward. The security guards watched her closely, but she kept moving. "Mr. Musk," she called out, her voice trembling. "Please, could you help me? I just need $10 for food." She expected him to walk past like everyone else did. She expected the security guards to stop her, but something unexpected happened instead. Elon Musk paused and turned toward her voice. The crowd gathered outside SpaceX headquarters that morning, their phones raised high, hoping to catch a glimpse of their tech idol. Camera flashes sparkled like stars as Elon Musk emerged from the building, surrounded by his team. He moved with purpose, stopping occasionally to answer questions from reporters who pressed forward eagerly. Lana watched from her spot on the sidewalk, feeling smaller with each passing second. Her worn clothes and disheveled appearance stood in stark contrast to the well-dressed crowd. She almost gave up then, almost sank back into her familiar invisibility. But hunger has a way of making people brave. "Mr. Musk," her voice came out barely above a whisper at first. No one heard her. She took a deep breath and tried again, louder this time. "Mr. Musk, please." A security guard turned toward her, ready to wave her away, but something unexpected happened. Elon Musk himself paused mid-sentence and looked in her direction. The crowd fell quiet, cameras turning to capture this unscripted moment. I hate to ask," Lana said, her voice shaking, "but could you spare $10? Just for some food?" The words felt like stones in her mouth, each one heavy with shame. She kept her eyes down, studying the cracks in the sidewalk. Instead of continuing to his waiting car, Elon took a step toward her. His team exchanged worried glances, but he waved them off. Then he did something that made Lana's heart stop. He looked directly into her eyes, not past her, not through her, but at her, as if really seeing her. The moment stretched out, heavy with possibility. Lana felt exposed under his gaze, as if he could see not just who she was now, but who she had been before, the successful professional, the mother, the person who once had dreams and plans. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. For the first time in months, someone was actually seeing her. The crowd watched in silence, phones still recording, waiting to see what would happen next. Even the ever-present Los Angeles traffic seemed to quiet down, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. But instead of just handing Lana money and walking away, he did something unexpected. "Here's $20, he said quietly, "but I want to ask you something else." Lana stared at the bill in her hand, confused. People usually gave her money to make her go away. They didn't ask questions. They didn't want to know more. "Is there something else I can help you with?" Elon's voice was gentle but direct. Something more than just money. The question caught Lana off guard. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. When was the last time someone had asked about her needs? When was the last time someone had looked at her as a person, not just a problem to avoid? She stammered, her hands trembling. "I don't understand." Elon glanced at his team, then back at Lana. $10 might buy you food today, he said, but tomorrow you'll be hungry again. What if I could offer you something different? Something that could change your life? Lana felt tears forming in her eyes. For months, people had treated her like she was invisible. They walked past her on the street, pretending not to see her. Store owners shooed her away. Security guards treated her like a nuisance. But here was one of the richest men in the world, talking to her like she mattered. "A bigger opportunity?" she whispered, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "Yes," Elon nodded. $10 is temporary, but I believe in giving people chances to rebuild their lives. Real chances." He paused, studying her face. "Would you be interested in something like that?" The crowd around them had grown quiet, watching this unexpected scene unfold. Reporters held their cameras steady, capturing every word. But Lana barely noticed them anymore. All she could focus on was this impossible moment, this strange conversation that felt like a dream. A chance, a real chance. The words echoed in her mind like bells. She thought about her daughter Emily, about her father, about all the bridges she had burned. Could things really change? Was it possible to start over? For the first time in months, something stirred in Lana's heart. It felt strange, almost foreign, a tiny spark of hope. She hadn't allowed herself to hope for so long, afraid of being disappointed yet again. But here it was, warm and unexpected, like the first ray of sunlight after a storm. "A chance to change?" Elon asked again, his voice steady and calm. "Not just for today, but for your future. Would you be interested?" Lana felt tears rolling down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them away with her sleeve. The morning air suddenly felt different, charged with possibility. The usual sounds of the city, car horns, distant sirens, people talking, seemed to fade away. "Yes," she whispered, then cleared her throat and said it louder. "Yes, I would." The word felt strange on her tongue, like she was speaking a language she had forgotten. When was the last time she had said yes to anything except survival? When was the last time she had dared to think beyond her next meal? "I know it won't be easy," Elon said. "Change never is. But if you're willing to work hard, to really try, I'm willing to give you that chance." Lana nodded, unable to speak anymore. The tiny spark of hope in her chest had grown stronger, making it hard to breathe. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment everything could start to change. "Okay," Lana said softly, her heart racing. "I'll try." The words came out before her usual doubts could stop them. Part of her wondered if this was just another dream, something her mind had created to escape reality. She had learned not to trust in miracles. Life on the streets had taught her that kindness usually came with strings attached. Most promises turned out empty. But something felt different about this moment, about the way Elon had really seen her. "I don't know what this chance is," she admitted, wringing her hands nervously, "and I'm not sure I deserve it, but if you're really offering, I want to try." Elon nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. "That's all I'm asking for, a willingness to try. Meet me here tomorrow morning at 9. We'll start then." As he turned to leave with his team, Lana stood frozen on the sidewalk. Was this real? Would he actually come back tomorrow? The doubts crept in like old friends, whispering that she was foolish to hope. But for once, Lana pushed the doubts aside. Even if this was a long shot, even if it seemed impossible, she would be here tomorrow. After all, what did she have to lose? And maybe, Just maybe this was the chance she had been silently praying for all these months. That night, Lana huddled in her usual spot under the bridge, where cardboard boxes and an old blanket made up her temporary home. The $20 Elon had given her sat untouched in her pocket. Somehow, spending it felt like breaking a spell, like admitting that this morning's encounter might have been just another dream. The city's night sounds surrounded her, distant sirens, cars passing overhead, the rustling of other homeless people settling in for the night. But for the first time in months, Lana's mind wasn't focused on the cold or hunger or fear. Instead, she kept replaying the morning's events in her head. Could it be real? She whispered to herself, pulling her thin blanket tighter. Rich people didn't just stop and talk to homeless people. They especially didn't offer them chances at a new life. It had to be some kind of joke or publicity stunt. Yet Elon's eyes had seemed so sincere, his voice so genuine. Doubt crept in like a cold wind. What if I show up tomorrow and he's not there? The thought made her stomach tight. Or worse, what if he is there and I fail at whatever chance he's offering? She thought about all her previous failures, lost jobs, broken relationships, disappointed family members. Her daughter Emily's face flashed in her mind, making her heart ache. But another voice, smaller but persistent, kept breaking through her doubts. What if it's real? This voice sounded like her old self, the Lana who used to wear business suits and make presentations in boardrooms. What if this is your one chance to climb out of this life? She pulled out her only possession of value, an old photo of Emily, creased and worn from being carried everywhere. Her daughter's smile, frozen in time, seemed to encourage her. I need to try, Lana told the photo. For you. For us. The night grew colder, but Lana barely noticed. Her mind kept jumping between hope and fear, possibility and doubt. She thought about her father, who had given up on her years ago. She thought about her old colleagues, who wouldn't even recognize her now. Could she really go back to being someone they would respect? Even if it's not real, she decided finally, watching the first hints of dawn color the sky, I have to try. Staying here like this, that's not living anyway. Lana stood up, brushing off her clothes as best she could. She had no watch, no phone to tell time, but she knew she needed to start walking soon to reach SpaceX by 9. Her legs felt shaky, not just from hunger, but from nervousness. For a moment, she almost sat back down. The familiar pull of giving up, of staying in the safety of known misery, was strong, but something had changed inside her. That tiny spark of hope Elon had ignited refused to die out. Out step at a time, she told herself, gathering her few belongings, just like starting any new job. The words felt strange in her mouth, like speaking a foreign language she had almost forgotten, but they also felt right. As she stepped out from under the bridge, the morning sun warming her face, Lana made a decision. Whether this was a real opportunity or just another disappointment waiting to happen, she would face it head on. She had spent too long being invisible, too long surviving instead of living. Maybe it was time to try being brave instead. Your first challenge, Elon said, standing in front of a small auto repair shop, is to learn how to fix cars. The morning sun glinted off the metal tools and car parts scattered around the workshop. The smell of oil and grease filled the air. Lana stared at the garage, her heart sinking. Of all the possible challenges, this seemed impossible. She had never even changed a tire before. The most she knew about cars was how to fill them with gas. I don't know anything about cars, she admitted, her voice shaking. The tools on the workbench looked like alien objects to her. A mechanic in blue overalls walked past, carrying what looked like a car engine part, and Lana felt even more out of place. That's why it's called learning, Elon replied calmly. Clara will be your instructor. He gestured to a woman in her 40s who approached them, wiping her hands on a red shop rag. Clara's face was kind but professional. The first day was overwhelming. Clara showed Lana how to perform basic oil changes, but everything went wrong. She spilled oil on her shoes, couldn't figure out which filter to use, and nearly dropped a wrench on her foot. The other mechanics tried not to stare, but she could feel their eyes on her. I can't do this, Lana whispered to herself during lunch break, sitting alone on an old tire. Her hands were covered in grease, and her confidence was lower than ever. The simple tasks that Clara demonstrated seemed impossible when Lana tried them herself. Each mistake felt like proof that she didn't belong here. When she couldn't loosen a bolt, her hands trembling on the wrench, tears of frustration threatened to fall. She thought about running away, back to the familiar streets where at least she knew what to expect. But Clara remained patient, showing her the same steps over and over. Everyone starts somewhere, she would say, demonstrating the proper technique again. No one was born knowing how to fix cars. Still, by the end of the day, Lana felt defeated. She had managed to complete just one oil change, taking 3 times longer than normal. The tools felt awkward in her hands, and the car manuals might as well have been written in a foreign language. As she watched the other mechanics work smoothly and confidently, she wondered if she would ever belong in this world of engines and repairs. By the end of her first week, Lana sat in the break room, staring at her grease-stained hands. I can't do this anymore, she said quietly, more to herself than to Clara, who stood nearby. Maybe I should just go back to... Back to what? Clara interrupted, pulling up a chair. Her voice was firm but kind. Look at what you did today. That oil change you completed? Last week you couldn't even find the drain plug. Lana managed a small smile, remembering how she had successfully completed her first solo oil change that morning. Clara had stood back, just watching, not needing to step in once. Small steps, Clara continued, showing Lana how to hold a wrench more effectively. That's how everyone learns. You think I knew everything when I started? I once put windshield washer fluid in an oil tank. Day by day, things began to make more sense. The tools that once felt foreign started to feel familiar in Lana's hands. She learned to recognize engine sounds, to understand what different warning lights meant. Each small victory built her confidence a little more. See how this belt is worn? Clara would say, and Lana could actually see it now. She began to understand the logic behind each repair, how one part affected another. The car manuals that once seemed incomprehensible started to make sense. One afternoon, while successfully completing a brake pad replacement, Lana realized something important. Success wasn't about natural talent. It was about showing up every day, trying again, learning from mistakes. Each small step forward, no matter how tiny, was still progress. You're getting it, Clara said proudly as Lana correctly diagnosed a timing belt issue. The words felt like sunshine after rain, warming Lana from the inside out. For the first time in years, she felt capable, useful, like someone who could actually build a future. There were still hard days, days when Lana dropped tools, misdiagnosed problems, or struggled with difficult repairs. But something had changed in how she handled these setbacks. Instead of giving up, she would take a deep breath, study what went wrong, and try again. "That's better," Clara would say, watching Lana methodically work through a problem. "See how the engine sounds different now?" And Lana could hear it, the subtle changes that meant she had fixed something correctly. Each small success felt like a stepping stone toward a new life. One morning, a customer brought in a car with brake issues. Without thinking, Lana stepped forward, confident in her ability to handle it. As she worked, she realized how natural it felt now, checking the brake pads, testing the rotors, making adjustments. When she finished, the customer's grateful smile meant more than any paycheck could. "Nice work," Clara said simply, but Lana beamed with pride. She thought about how far she had come from that first day when she couldn't tell a wrench from a screwdriver. Each small improvement had built upon the last, like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. The grease under her fingernails didn't bother her anymore. Instead, it felt like a badge of honor, proof that she was building something new. Every repaired car, every solved problem added another brick to the foundation of her new life. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and for the first time in years, Lana felt truly proud of what she was accomplishing. At the end of her first month at the auto shop, Lana sat on a workbench after hours, looking around the now familiar garage. Tools that once seemed intimidating were now like old friends. The sound of engines no longer made her nervous. Instead, she could diagnose problems just by listening. "You've come a long way," Clara said, joining her. "Remember your first oil change?" Lana laughed, a sound that surprised her with its genuine joy. "I spilled more oil than I put in the car." She looked down at her hands, calloused now from work, strong from using tools. These were no longer the hands of someone who had given up. Each small victory had built her confidence, learning to change brake pads, understanding engine timing, fixing electrical issues. But more than just fixing cars, she had learned something deeper about herself. Change wasn't about big, dramatic moments. It was about showing up every day, trying again, doing the small things right. "I never thought I could do any of this," Lana admitted quietly. "When I was living on the streets, just getting through each day seemed impossible. Now," she gestured at the garage, at the car she had just finished repairing, "now I know that anything is possible if you keep trying." Clara nodded, understanding in her eyes. That's the real lesson, isn't it? It's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. Lana thought about her next challenges, about all the things she still needed to learn. But for the first time, these thoughts didn't frighten her. Each step forward, no matter how small, was taking her closer to the life she wanted to rebuild. Just as Lana was beginning to feel confident in her work at the auto shop, Elon visited with news of her next challenge. She noticed something different in his expression as he approached her workbench one afternoon. "You've done well here," he said, watching as she wiped grease from her hands. "But now it's time for something different, something that might hit closer to home." Lana's heart tightened when Elon explained her next task. She would need to help a homeless family, a mother and 2 children who had been living in their car. The words made her throat go dry, bringing back memories of her own recent past. "They're parked behind the old grocery store on Maple Street," Elon said, handing her a folder. "The mother's name is Sarah. She lost her job 3 months ago, and things spiraled from there." He paused, studying Lana's face. "Sound familiar?" "It did. Too familiar." Lana thought of her own journey from stability to streets, how quickly life could fall apart. "What exactly do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Help them find their way back," Elon replied simply. "You've been where they are. You know what it's like. But more importantly, you know it's possible to climb out." When Lana found their car, her heart broke. The windows were covered with blankets for privacy, and 2 small bikes were chained to the back bumper. She remembered how she used to hide from the world too, how shame became a constant companion. Sarah, the mother, watched Lana approach with suspicious eyes. Her children, a boy and girl probably around 8 and 6, peeked out from behind her. Their clothes were clean but worn, their faces carrying worry no child should know. "Whatever you're selling, we are not interested," Sarah said firmly, stepping in front of her children. "I'm not selling anything," Lana replied softly. "I'm here to help. A few months ago, I was living on these same streets." Sarah's expression didn't soften. "We don't need charity," she said, but Lana could hear the exhaustion in her voice, the same pride that had kept her own pain hidden for so long. "It's not charity," Lana said, thinking carefully about her next words. "It's a chance. Like someone gave me. Please, just hear me out. Please listen to me." Lana pleads for her lover, yet he agrees and doesn't think the same of her. The next few days tested Lana's patience more than any car repair ever had. Sarah remained distant, accepting only the most basic help, a hot meal here, some clean clothes there. The children, Tommy and Lisa, watched Lana with curious eyes, but stayed close to their mother, like little shadows afraid to step into the light. "I know you don't trust me," Lana said one morning, sitting on a bench near their car. "I wouldn't have trusted me either back then." She pulled out a photo from her pocket, the same worn picture of Emily she always carried. "I have a daughter too. Had. Still have, but..." Her voice trailed off. Something shifted in Sarah's expression. For the first time, she really looked at Lana, not through her. "What happened?" she asked quietly, while her children played nearby with some toys Lana had brought. "Life happened," Lana replied. "Bad choices, pride. Thinking I could handle everything alone." She paused, watching Tommy push a toy car across the pavement. "But someone gave me a chance to change things. That's all I'm trying to do here." Over the next weeks, Lana worked tirelessly. She helped Sarah update her resume using computers at the local library. They searched for apartments together, made phone calls, filled out applications, but more importantly, Lana listened. She heard Sarah's fears about failing her children, her shame about living in a car, her dreams of giving them a better life. "It's not just about finding a place to live," Lana explained to Sarah one evening as they shared coffee from a nearby diner. "It's about believing you deserve one." The words felt strange coming from her mouth. They were the same lessons she was still learning herself. Slowly, like ice melting in spring, Sarah's defenses began to thaw. She started accepting more help, not just for survival but for rebuilding. When Lana found a small apartment within their budget and a potential job lead for Sarah, tears formed in both women's eyes. "What are you doing all this?" Sarah asked one day, watching her children play in their new, albeit modest, living room. The apartment was sparsely furnished, but it was safe, warm, and most importantly, it was home. Lana smiled, thinking about her own journey. "Because someone did it for me," she said simply, "and because sometimes we all need someone to believe in us before we can believe in ourselves." Looking at Sarah and her children settling into their new home, Lana realized that her help had been about more than finding housing or employment. It was about restoring dignity, rebuilding confidence, and showing that change was possible. In helping this family find their way back, she had learned something valuable about her own journey too. As weeks turned into months, Lana watched a remarkable transformation unfold. The same family that had once refused her help now welcomed her visits with warm smiles. Tommy and Lisa would run to greet her, eager to share their latest school achievements, a drawing, a good grade, a new friend made. "Miss Lana, look," Lisa called out one afternoon, waving a paper with a gold star. "I got the highest score in math." Her eyes sparkled with a confidence that hadn't existed when they first met. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching her daughter with tears of pride. "You know," Sarah said one evening as they sat in the small kitchen, "I didn't trust anyone when you first came. I thought you were just another person making empty promises." She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "But you kept coming back, every single day, even when I pushed you away." Lana nodded, remembering her own struggles with trust. "Change isn't just about having opportunities," she replied. "It's about learning to believe in them again." The apartment, though modest, had become a real home. Photos hung on the walls, homework spread across the kitchen table, and the smell of home-cooked meals replaced the fear of uncertainty. Sarah had not only kept her new job, but had received her first promotion. The children were thriving in their new school, making friends and joining activities. "Sometimes I still worry," Sarah admitted one day, folding laundry while the kids did homework. "I worry this could all disappear, that we'll end up back in that car." "That fear doesn't go away overnight," Lana said softly. "But look how far you've come. You did this, Sarah. You took the chance and made it work." Watching this family rebuild their life taught Lana something profound about her own journey. Change wasn't a single moment, but a series of small steps forward, each one building on the last. It required not just courage to begin, but patience to continue, even when progress seemed slow. The greatest reward wasn't in the tangible changes, the apartment, the job, the stability, but in the renewed hope she saw in their eyes. They had learned to dream again, to plan for a future that once seemed impossible. And in helping them find their way, Lana had strengthened her own belief in the power of second chances. The day Sarah's family moved into a bigger apartment was a milestone that marked more than just a change of address. As Lana helped them carry boxes up the stairs, she couldn't help but marvel at how different things were from that first meeting behind the grocery store. "Remember when you wouldn't even let me buy you coffee?" Lana teased Sarah as they unpacked boxes in the new kitchen. Sarah laughed, a free, genuine sound that would have been unimaginable months ago. "And now look at us," Sarah replied, arranging dishes in the cabinets. "Who would have thought?" She paused, holding a mug Tommy had made in art class. "You know, Lana, you didn't just help us find a home, you helped us find ourselves again." Tommy and Lisa burst into the kitchen, excited about choosing their own rooms for the first time. Their eyes shone with the simple joy of children who felt secure, who no longer carried the weight of adult worries on their small shoulders. "Miss Lana," Lisa tugged at her sleeve, "will you come see my room? I'm going to paint it purple." Her excitement was infectious, and Lana felt her own heart swell with pride. Later that evening, as Lana prepared to leave, she stood in the doorway watching Sarah help the kids with their homework at their new dining table. The scene struck her deeply. This was what hope looked like when it took root and grew. "You did all of this?" Sarah said, walking Lana to the door. "You gave us hope when we had none." But Lana shook her head, smiling. "No," she replied softly. "You did this. I just showed you it was possible." She paused, realizing something important. "And in helping you believe in yourself again, I learned to believe in myself too." As she walked away from their new home, Lana understood that her success with Sarah's family wasn't just about providing resources or solutions. It was about the power of one person who had known darkness, helping another find their way to light. In teaching Sarah's family to trust again, she had strengthened her own faith in the possibility of change. Just as Lana was settling into her success with Sarah's family, nature had other plans for Los Angeles. A massive storm swept through the city, leaving devastation in its wake. Trees lay uprooted, homes stood damaged, and entire neighborhoods were without power. Elon called Lana to SpaceX headquarters early one morning. "The city needs help," he said, showing her photos of the destruction on his tablet. "And I need you to lead a team of volunteers to help with the recovery." Lana's heart raced. Lead? Me? She had just learned to fix cars and help one family. Now he wanted her to manage an entire team? 50 volunteers, Elon continued, as if he hadn't heard her doubt. Most of them have never done disaster recovery work before. You'll need to organize them, train them, and keep them motivated. The next morning, Lana stood before her team in a community center. The volunteers were a mixed group: students, office workers, retired folks, all eager to help, but unsure where to start. Some looked as nervous as she felt. "I know this seems overwhelming," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "But if we work together, we can make a difference." She looked at their faces, seeing the same uncertainty she had felt when she first started at the auto shop. The challenges became apparent immediately. Some volunteers didn't know how to use basic tools. Others argued about the best way to clear debris. When the rain started again, many wanted to quit. "We don't have enough equipment," one volunteer complained, "and nobody knows what they're doing." Lana looked at her scattered team, remembering how lost she had felt on her first day fixing cars. She took a deep breath. This was about more than just cleaning up storm damage. This was about leading people to believe in themselves, just as others had believed in her. The first days of cleanup were chaos. Lana watched her team struggle with even simple tasks. One group couldn't coordinate moving fallen trees, while another argued over the proper way to clear flooded basements. "This isn't working," she muttered to herself, watching two volunteers debate about where to pile debris. Then she remembered Clara's teaching style at the auto shop: patient, encouraging, breaking complex tasks into smaller steps. "Let's try something different," Lana announced, gathering her team. "Instead of tackling everything at once, we'll start with one block, one house at a time." She divided them into smaller groups, matching experienced workers with newcomers. "You know about carpentry?" she asked an older man who'd mentioned working in construction. "Great! You can teach these three how to repair damaged porches. And Sarah?" She smiled at her friend who had volunteered to help. "You're good with organizing. Can you coordinate our supply distribution?" Slowly, things began to improve. Lana walked from group to group, offering encouragement, solving problems, and, most importantly, listening. When arguments broke out, she helped find compromise. When spirits fell, she shared stories of progress made. "See that house?" she'd say, pointing to a cleared property. "Yesterday it was buried in debris. You did that, together." The turning point came after a particularly hard day when the team successfully restored power to an elderly couple's home. The couple's gratitude moved everyone to tears, reminding them why they were there. "We're not just cleaning streets," Lana told her team that evening. We're helping people rebuild their lives." As weeks passed, the transformation was remarkable. Her scattered volunteers became a coordinated team. They developed systems for everything: debris removal, repair work, supply distribution. More importantly, they began to believe in themselves and each other. When the final house was repaired and the last street cleared, Lana looked at her tired but proud team. They had done more than clean up storm damage. They had become a community, proving that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they worked together. "You led them well," Elon said, surveying the restored neighborhood. "You didn't just manage the cleanup, you built a team." Lana nodded, understanding now that leadership wasn't about giving orders. It was about bringing out the best in people, just as others had done for her. As Lana stood in the community center on their final day, surrounded by her team, celebrating their success, she realized something profound. The real victory wasn't just in the cleared streets and repaired homes. It was in the connections they'd built along the way. "You know what amazes me?" one volunteer said, sharing pizza with the group. "A month ago, we were all strangers. Now look at us." Around the room, people who had once argued over cleanup procedures now laughed together like old friends. Lana watched as team members exchanged phone numbers, making plans to volunteer for other community projects. The elderly couple whose power they'd restored had brought homemade cookies. Children played in the corner, wearing shirts with their team logo, like the American flag floating below the letter U, designed by one of the younger volunteers. "Leading isn't what I thought it was," Lana confided to Sarah later that evening. "I thought it was about telling people what to do, but it's really about helping people believe in something bigger than themselves." She thought about her own journey, from homeless and hopeless to leading a successful community recovery effort. Each challenge had taught her something new about herself, but this one had shown her the power of unity and shared purpose. When we started, Lana reflected, watching the sunset over their restored neighborhood. Everyone saw the destruction. Now they see what's possible when people work together. She smiled, thinking of how far they'd all come. Maybe that's what real leadership is, helping people see possibilities instead of problems. As she walked home that evening, past houses her team had repaired and streets they'd cleared, Lana understood that she would never stop learning about leadership. Each new challenge would bring new lessons, new opportunities to grow. And somehow, that thought didn't scare her anymore. It excited her. In the weeks that followed, Lana's team didn't disband, they evolved. What had started as a storm cleanup crew became a dedicated community service group. Every weekend they would gather to tackle new projects, fixing playgrounds, cleaning parks, or helping elderly residents with home repairs. "Remember when you couldn't get us to agree on how to move a fallen tree?" laughed Mike, one of her original volunteers, as they painted a community center wall. "Now look at us. We're like a well-oiled machine." The transformation wasn't just in their efficiency. It was in their spirit. People who had once been hesitant to take on challenges now approached each project with confidence and enthusiasm. They had become more than volunteers. They were change makers. "It's amazing what people can do when they believe in themselves," Lana told Elon during one of his visits to check on their progress. "Sometimes they just need someone to show them it's possible." On a warm Sunday afternoon, as Lana watched her team complete their latest project, renovating a shelter for homeless families, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The shelter's walls, once gray and deteriorating, now stood bright with fresh paint and new windows. Gardens bloomed where weeds had grown, and children played on newly installed playground equipment. "You know what made this work?" Sarah asked, joining Lana as they watched the celebration. It wasn't just the planning or the organization. It was your patience, your belief in us. You showed us how to be a team." Lana smiled, thinking about how far they'd all come. The success wasn't measured just in completed projects, but in the confidence she saw in her team's eyes, in the friendships that had formed, and in the community that had grown stronger together. "We did this," she said softly, looking at her team celebrating another successful project, all of us, together. And she knew that this was just the beginning of what they could achieve. After proving herself as a leader, Lana thought she had faced her toughest challenges. But one morning, Elon called her into his office with a different kind of task, one that made her heart race faster than any previous challenge. "You've helped others rebuild their lives," he said quietly, sitting across from her. "Now it's time to rebuild your own family." Lana felt her throat tighten. "My father?" Her voice trembled. "And Emily?" Elon nodded, sliding a piece of paper across his desk. On it was an address she hadn't seen in years. Her father's house, where she'd grown up, where she'd last fought with him, before everything fell apart. "They're still there," Elon said gently. "Your father, James, your daughter, Emily, they deserve to know who you've become." Lana stared at the familiar address, her hands shaking. Leading volunteers through a disaster zone suddenly seemed easy compared to this. Facing strangers was one thing. Facing family, the people she'd hurt most, that was different. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, memories flooding back. The last time she'd seen her father, he'd told her not to come back until she'd gotten her life together. The last time she'd seen Emily, her daughter had been crying, asking why Mommy had to go. "This might be the hardest thing you'll ever do," Elon said, "but it's also the most important. Real change means facing our past, not just building our future." Lana nodded slowly, folding the paper and putting it in her pocket. Every step forward she'd taken, learning to fix cars, helping Sarah's family, leading the volunteer team, had been preparing her for this moment. Now she had to face the most difficult repair job of all, fixing her broken family. The drive to her father's house felt endless. Each familiar street sign brought back memories, both good and painful. When Lana finally parked outside the modest two-story home, she sat in her car for several minutes, gathering courage. Emily was playing in the front yard when Lana approached. Her daughter, now 12, stopped mid-motion, the chalk she'd been drawing with falling from her hand. For a moment, they just stared at each other, mother and daughter, separated by years of absence. "Emily," Lana whispered, her voice breaking. Before she could finish, Emily ran inside, screen door slamming behind her. Moments later, James appeared, his face a mix of shock and guarded emotion. "Dad?" Lana said softly. "Can we talk?" Inside, the house looked exactly as she remembered. Family photos still lined the walls, though she noticed her pictures had been taken down. Emily sat on the stairs watching silently, her face unreadable. "I know saying sorry isn't enough," Lana began, her hands twisting in her lap. "I messed up. I let addiction take over my life. I chose drugs over my own daughter," her voice cracked, "over my family." She told them everything. About hitting rock bottom, about Elon's chance encounter, about learning to fix cars and help others. With each word, tears flowed freely. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right now," she said, looking at Emily. "I know I hurt you both too deeply for that, but I want you to know I'm fighting to be better. Every day I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your mother again." Emily's eyes glistened with tears. "You left me," she said, her voice small but sharp. You promised you'd never leave, but you did." "I know, baby," Lana whispered, "and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that right, if you'll let me." This wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were no instant hugs or immediate forgiveness. But as Lana shared her journey of recovery and change, she saw something shift in both her father's and daughter's eyes. It was tiny, barely noticeable, but it was there, a flicker of hope, a possibility of healing. "It's going to take time," James said finally, his voice gruff but softer than before. "A lot of time." Lana nodded, understanding that this was just the beginning of a long journey. "I know," she replied, "and I'm ready to take however long it needs." As the afternoon light began to fade, Emily slowly descended the stairs. She had been quiet throughout Lana's story, but something in her young face had softened. "Can I show you something?" Emily asked suddenly, her first voluntary words to her mother. She disappeared upstairs and returned with a shoebox, worn at the edges. Inside were memories, photos of happier times, old birthday cards Lana had written, even the bracelet she had given Emily on her 8th birthday. "I kept everything," Emily said quietly, her voice trembling. "Even when I was angry, I couldn't throw them away." Lana's heart ached as she looked through the box. Each item was a reminder of promises broken, of moments lost. But they were also proof that love remained, buried beneath the pain. Without warning, Emily leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Lana. The hug was brief, tentative, but it spoke volumes. Lana felt tears roll down her cheeks as she gently returned the embrace, afraid to hold too tight, afraid to let go. "I missed you, Mom," Emily whispered, her voice muffled against Lana's shoulder, "even when I tried not to." James watched from the doorway, his own eyes glistening. He didn't join the embrace, but his expression had softened. "Baby steps," he said quietly, and Lana understood. Forgiveness wouldn't come all at once, but this moment was a beginning. As Lana prepared to leave that evening, she felt both drained and lighter. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time, she could see a path forward. Emily's hug, though brief, had given her something precious: hope. "Can I come back?" Lana asked softly, standing in the doorway. James nodded slowly. "Sunday dinner, 6 o'clock, he said. "Don't be late." It wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. And sometimes, Lana realized, starts were the most important part of any repair job. Just as Lana was beginning to rebuild bridges with her family, Elon presented her with what would be her greatest professional challenge yet. He called her to his office early one morning, the SpaceX headquarters buzzing with its usual energy of innovation and possibility. "You've overcome every challenge I've given you," he said, studying her with thoughtful eyes. "You've learned to fix cars when you'd never even changed a tire. You helped a family find their way back from homelessness. You led a team through disaster recovery. And, most importantly, you've faced your past and started healing your family relationships." He paused, letting his words sink in. Now it's time for something bigger. Lana felt her heart race as Elon pulled up a series of complex technical diagrams on his tablet. These weren't car engines or construction plans. They were spacecraft components, cutting-edge technology that made her previous challenges seem simple in comparison. "I want you to join our team here at SpaceX," Elon continued, "working on our latest project." The words hung in the air between them, and Lana felt a familiar wave of self-doubt wash over her. "But I'm just a mechanic," she whispered, staring at the intricate designs. "These people are engineers, scientists. Elon shook his head, cutting off her protest. You're someone who never gives up, who learns and adapts, who helps others believe in themselves. That's exactly the kind of person we need here. Would you like me to continue with the next section about her initial experiences at SpaceX? The first few weeks at SpaceX tested everything Lana had learned. Each day brought new challenges that made her head spin, complex calculations, cutting-edge technology, and teams of brilliant minds all working together on projects that seemed impossible. The sleek corridors and high-tech laboratories were a far cry from the familiar comfort of the auto shop. We're working on improving the heat shields for our next spacecraft, her team leader explained during one meeting. Lives depend on getting this right. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than any car she'd ever fixed. But slowly, Lana began to see patterns emerging. The problem-solving skills she'd learned fixing cars, the leadership abilities she'd developed during the storm recovery, and the patience she'd cultivated helping Sarah's family, all these experiences had prepared her for this moment. She discovered that while the technology might be different, the fundamental principles of troubleshooting and teamwork remained the same. What if we approach this like a car's cooling system? She suggested during one particularly challenging meeting. The engineers around the table looked skeptical at first, but as she explained her thinking, their expressions changed to interest, then excitement. Her unique perspective brought a fresh approach to old problems. Days turned into weeks, and Lana found herself growing more confident in her contributions. She learned to bridge the gap between theoretical engineers and practical technicians, translating complex concepts into actionable solutions. Her experience with real-world repairs gave her insights that even the most brilliant theorists sometimes missed. "You see things differently," one of the senior engineers told her after she helped solve a persistent issue with a component design. "Sometimes we get so caught up in the theory that we forget about practical application. You bring both worlds together." Working on spacecraft that would one day carry humans to Mars, Lana realized she'd found something she'd never expected, not just a job, but a calling. Each problem she helped solve, each improvement she suggested, was contributing to humanity's next great adventure. The homeless woman who once felt invisible was now helping to build the future. Looking back at her journey, from the streets to SpaceX, Lana felt a profound sense of transformation. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, growing, and helping to push the boundaries of what was possible. The confidence she'd gained wasn't just about technical skills or leadership abilities. It was about believing in her own potential to make a difference in the world. After months of working at SpaceX, mastering complex challenges and contributing to groundbreaking projects, Elon had one final challenge for Lana, perhaps the most daunting of all. She would need to share her entire journey with the company at an all-hands meeting. The SpaceX auditorium buzzed with anticipation as employees filled every seat. Lana stood backstage, her heart pounding against her ribs. Public speaking had never been her strength, and now she faced hundreds of the brightest minds in the aerospace industry. Her hands trembled as she smoothed her blazer, so different from the tattered clothes she'd worn just months ago. "You ready?" Elon asked, appearing beside her. His presence, once intimidating, now felt reassuring. "What if they don't understand?" Lana whispered. "These people have degrees from top universities. I was living under a bridge less than a year ago." "That's exactly why they need to hear your story." Elon replied softly. Success isn't just about intelligence or education. It's about resilience, about getting up when life knocks you down. As Lana stepped onto the stage, the bright lights temporarily blinding her, she caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd. Clara from the auto shop sat near the front, along with Sarah and her children. Even her father and Emily were there, their presence giving her strength. "A year ago," she began, her voice shaky but growing stronger, "I was invisible, just another homeless person you might pass on the street without a second glance." The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on her. "I thought that was the end of my story, but I was wrong. It was actually the beginning." Her voice grew steadier as she shared her journey, learning to fix cars, helping Sarah's family, leading the storm recovery team, reconciling with her own family, and finally finding her place at SpaceX. Each challenge, each victory, each lesson learned became part of a larger story about the power of second chances and the strength of the human spirit. "What I've learned," Lana continued, her voice now clear and confident, "is that no one is ever truly invisible unless we let ourselves be. Every one of us has the capacity to change, to grow, to contribute something meaningful to the world. Sometimes, we just need someone to believe in us before we can believe in ourselves." "The hardest part of change," Lana continued, her eyes scanning the attentive faces before her, "isn't learning new skills or facing challenges. It's learning to trust yourself again after you've lost everything." She paused, letting the words sink in. "When I first started at the auto shop, I couldn't even hold a wrench properly. But Clara taught me something more important than fixing cars. She taught me that growth comes from persistence, not perfection." A gentle smile crossed her face as she thought about her journey. "Each step taught me something different. Sarah and her family showed me that helping others heal could heal myself. The storm recovery team taught me that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about bringing people together to find solutions. And here at SpaceX," she gestured around the room, "I learned that there are no limits to what we can achieve when we dare to try." Her voice grew stronger with conviction. "I stand here today not as someone who was saved, but as someone who learned to save herself. I'm no longer invisible, not because someone else saw me, but because I finally learned to see myself." She looked directly at Elon, then at her father and daughter. "True change isn't just about getting a job or a home. It's about rediscovering who you are and who you can become." "This journey hasn't been easy," Lana acknowledged, her voice softening. "There were days I wanted to give up, days when the past felt too heavy to carry. But that's what real transformation is. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It happens in small moments, in daily choices, in refusing to let our past define our future." The confidence in her voice wasn't just for show. It came from a place of deep understanding and hard-won wisdom. She was no longer the woman who had trembled at the thought of touching a car engine, or who had doubted her ability to help others. She had become someone who could not only change her own life, but could inspire others to change theirs as well. As Lana concluded her speech, the auditorium erupted in applause. But the real celebration came afterwards, when Elon stepped onto the stage with an announcement that made her heart soar. "Today," he said, his voice carrying across the now quiet room, "I'm proud to announce that Lana will be heading our new Community Innovation Program at SpaceX. She'll be using her unique experience and perspective to help us develop technologies that can make a real difference in people's lives." The position wasn't just a job, it was a bridge between her past and future. In her new role, Lana would work with teams developing solutions for communities in crisis, from emergency shelter systems to sustainable infrastructure. Her journey from homelessness to leadership had given her insights that no amount of theoretical knowledge could provide. Later that evening, as she sat between her father and daughter at a small celebration dinner, Lana reflected on how far she'd come. Emily leaned against her shoulder, no longer the distant child who had once run from her presence. Her father reached across the table and squeezed her hand, pride evident in his eyes. "You did it, Mom," Emily whispered, and those 3 simple words held all the forgiveness and love Lana had hoped for. Looking around the table at the people who had been part of her journey, Clara from the auto shop, Sarah and her children, members of her storm recovery team, and her new colleagues from SpaceX, Lana realized that success wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about building connections, healing relationships, and using your own transformation to help others find their way. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving, leading and showing others that change was possible. Her story had become more than just a personal triumph. It was proof that with courage, persistence, and the right support, anyone could rewrite their own ending. In the months that followed, Lana's work at SpaceX took on new dimensions. She found herself regularly visiting homeless shelters and community centers, not just as a success story, but as someone who could bridge the gap between cutting-edge technology and real-world needs. Each visit reminded her of where she'd started and strengthened her commitment to creating meaningful change. "You know what's different now?" she told Sarah one afternoon as they watched Sarah's children playing in their new neighborhood park, a project Lana's community team had helped renovate. "I used to think change was about reaching a destination. Now I understand it's about the journey itself." Through her work, Lana developed programs that combined SpaceX's innovation with practical solutions for struggling communities. She worked with engineers to design portable shelter systems, collaborated on sustainable energy projects for low-income neighborhoods, and created training programs for people looking to rebuild their lives. Each new challenge taught her something different. When projects faced setbacks, she drew strength from remembering her early days at the auto shop. When team members doubted their abilities, she shared her own story of transformation. The lessons she'd learned about persistence, courage, and believing in oneself became tools she used daily in her work and life. "Every difficulty is just another opportunity to grow stronger," she often told her team, words that came from her own lived experience. The woman who had once been afraid to touch a car engine was now fearlessly tackling some of society's biggest challenges, proving that transformation wasn't a single event, but a continuous journey of growth and learning. Sometimes, while walking through SpaceX's corridors late at night, Lana would pause by the windows overlooking the city. The same city where she had once slept under bridges now stretched before her, a sea of lights and possibilities. She no longer saw herself as the homeless woman desperate for $1, but as someone who could light the way for others finding their path. Each new project at SpaceX became more than just work. It was an opportunity to push her boundaries further. When faced with complex technical challenges or difficult decisions, she drew strength from her journey. The woman who had once thought fixing a car was impossible was now helping design systems that would eventually reach Mars. "Every challenge makes us stronger," she told her team during a project meeting, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had lived those words. Her eyes sparkled with purpose as she outlined their newest initiative, a program combining space technology with sustainable housing solutions. The other executives nodded in agreement, no longer seeing her past, but recognizing her vision for the future. Late one evening, as Lana prepared to leave her office, she caught her reflection in the window. The woman who looked back at her stood tall, dressed in a crisp business suit, her eyes clear and focused. But more than the external changes, it was the inner transformation that marked how far she'd come. She was no longer running from her past or merely surviving the present. She was actively shaping her future. As she gathered her things to head home, where Emily waited for their weekly dinner together, Lana smiled at the thought of how life had come full circle. Her journey hadn't ended with survival or success. It had evolved into something greater, a mission to help others find their own path to transformation. In the end, her story wasn't just about changing one life. It was about proving that every ending could be a new beginning, and that no star was too far to reach if you dared to try. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of hope and transformation. If Lana's story touched your heart, remember that every like, comment, and share helps spread this message of hope to others who might need it. What part of Lana's journey resonated with you the most? Was it her determination to learn auto repair, her courage in helping others despite her own struggles, or perhaps her emotional reunion with her family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to never miss another inspiring story. From homeless to SpaceX, from invisible to influential, stories like Lana's remind us that change is always possible. Join our growing community of dreamers and believers. Together, we can inspire more people to believe in second chances and the power of never giving up. See you in our next video, where another amazing story awaits.